Hey everyone, in this video I am going to show you what my experience has been using the ZOLEO satellite communicator. It's a backcountry communicator used when you pair it with your phone, and overall it works really good. Spoiler alert, but in this video I'll show you what it's like to use it. I'll give you my thoughts on its performance, and I'll also give you my thoughts on who this is a good fit for. Now before we dive in, just want to let you know that ZOLEO has let me basically give me a loaner unit to use and test. So this is not my personal unit, but when I'm done with it I will send it back to keep everything on the up and up. If you're watching the video and you find it helpful, if you give me a thumbs up, that would help. There's also a corresponding web page on HikingGuy.com where I go into more detail on everything that I'll show you in this video, so check that out if you want to go deeper. And if you do end up buying a ZOLEO and you found my review and my guide helpful, you could do me a big solid by using one of my links from Amazon or REI to actually purchase the unit, and I have those under the video and on the web page. What that does is it gives me a small commission. There's no extra cost for you, and it helps me basically support the site without having to do ads or promoted posts, so that I can keep things clean and unbiased. But anyway guys, let's dive into what the heck this thing is. So what is this? This is a satellite communicator. So when you're in the backcountry and you are out of cell phone or Wi-Fi range, you can use this to communicate with people who have text messaging capabilities, email, or other ZOLEO users. So that comes in obviously very handy if there's an emergency. And the functions that it has messaging, it has SOS, so you can send out a distress signal like you would with inReach or PLB. It has location sharing, so you can let people track you. You have check-ins where you can send messages like on Spot where it says I'm okay, and it has your location, and you can get some limited weather with this as well. So that's kind of the functionality in a nutshell, and we'll go into those in detail as we go on. All right, let's talk about the unit. So it's a pretty simple little gray box here, and not a lot of buttons, unlike an inReach where you have a screen and buttons to kind of navigate around. This is, again, primarily designed to be used with your smartphone, but the buttons on here work without a smartphone as well, which is crucial when you are potentially in a messy situation. So let's go over the buttons. First, you have your power button right there. You just hold it in for 3 seconds and it turns on. You can also just tap it and it'll give you a battery status. That means my battery is full. Up top, you have this button here. This is the check-in button. If you hit it once, it will send a check-in message, and the buttons have little tactile clicks, so you know you've clicked it. And there's also a sound which you can disable, and the LED lights. Now, the sounds and the LEDs, you can look in the manual and see what they are, but I appreciate that they are kind of intuitive. The LEDs light green, and it makes a little cheery sound when something happens correctly, and it makes a sad sound and gives you red or orange lights when something's not working. So it's kind of evident as to what's going on when you, press a button or are waiting for a response. So you see, that means the message went through. That check-in message I just sent went through. It gave me a little cheery sound. The top button can also be used to activate the optional location sharing service, and you just hold it in for 3 seconds to turn that on, hold it in for 3 seconds to deactivate it. Probably the most important button is the SOS button, and that's right here, and it's under a latch like that, and you just hold that in to activate SOS. And you can put that down to make sure you don't accidentally activate it. I carried this in my backpack for a few months, and this never came open, but I do have a friend who just puts a piece of electrical tape on there just as an extra precaution. So it's an option, but overall it's pretty well sealed when you have this on. On this side you have a port with a micro USB connector right there. That's the standard micro USB that you get on almost everything electronic these days, and that is how you charge it. It takes about 2 hours to charge from the wall to fully charge, and has about an advertised 200-hour battery life. I'll talk about that a little bit later, but that's where you charge it, and then it seals back up with this rubberized gasket. On top, you have this little nylon loop hook enclosure. You can put a carabiner through that to hook it onto your backpack. I usually just carry this in the brain of my backpack up here where it got a clear line of sight to the sky. That was okay, and I didn't have any problems getting messages through or not through doing it that way, but you can hook it on if you prefer to wear it on the outside as well. One of the things I appreciate is that on the back of the ZOLEO, they give you instructions for dealing with an SOS. It's kind of self-evident, but it's nice to have it there if you don't remember what the procedure is, which you probably have not memorized because you probably don't hit SOS a lot. So that's a cool feature to have on the outside, very thoughtful. Overall, it is a rugged box. It's dustproof, it's waterproof. You can't submerge it deep for long, but you can get it wet, you can get it muddy, you can get it dirty, you can drop it. It's kind of got a rubber outside to it that bounces and protects it a little bit. I dropped it a few times. I didn't really thrash it because it's not mine, but overall, it definitely held up to my outdoor adventures. Let's talk about messaging, which is kind of the core feature of the satellite communicator. Now, first off, you need the ZOLEO app in order to send a message. It's fine, it's easy to use, it's pretty simple. I'll show you what it looks like in a second, but just know that you need that to actually get this to work. You can't use like iMessage or your text messaging app on your phone and send it through here. It has to be done through ZOLEO. The nice thing about that is ZOLEO gives you a dedicated email and phone number that never change. On an inReach, your phone number and email change occasionally, so you can't save it. People can respond back to what you send on inReach, but again, it can change as you reset it and reuse it. With the ZOLEO, it stays the same. So you can give somebody a contact phone number and email, and they can just contact you anytime using it. ZOLEO advertises something called seamless messaging, and it's a big selling point and marketing point for the ZOLEO. And basically what that means is that if your phone has a data connection, so via Wi-Fi or cellular, and you send a message through the ZOLEO app, it'll try to send that message through your phone's data connection first. And if it does it that way, you don't pay for the message. If it can't send it through data, let's say you're in the backcountry out of cell phone range, then it'll try to send it on the Iridium satellite network. And then if it does go through, it will charge you for a message. And it'll keep trying all different ways to go. So that's helpful. It'll try for up to 5 days. So in a sense, that's pretty good. The one thing that's not so great about that is generally when you're in the backcountry, you put your phone in airplane mode because you want to make sure that it doesn't run the battery down looking for cell service. So generally, if I'm in the backcountry, I already know that I'm going to be out of cell phone range. So in that case, the seamless capability is not super helpful for me personally, but I could see how it could be helpful for some people. Let's say you're doing a through hike or a long drive where you're in and out of cell phone range intermittently, and you don't want to have to think about it. In that case, it could be a really handy feature. But again, it all has to happen through the ZOLEO app when you're sending. All right, so here we are in the app. Now, I have 4 tabs in the bottom. I have messaging where I am right now. I have weather, SOS, and settings. But let's go ahead and send a message. Now, if I click on this little dot here, it's giving me all of my contacts, which I've synced with my contacts on my phone, so they come in automatically, which is nice. And then I can filter by those who have the ZOLEO app, those who are just on email, and those are just on SMS. And then I can also just type in a number here, whatever. Use this contact, and I can send it ad hoc as well. But anyway, let's send one to info@HikingGuy.com and use this. I type this in and I can type a message and I can say, hello, this is a test. You'll also notice I have a character limit over here on the bottom. It's doing this as email. If this were SMS, it would give me different numbers. And if it were ZOLEO to ZOLEO, I can do 950 characters, I believe. I can do much more. So it's going to give you a character limit based on what you have, and it'll just stop your data entry when you get to the end. So anyway, that looks like a good message. Let's go ahead and send it. And there we go. The message is sent. And if I go back, I can go down here, and you can see that it says messaging in process. It's giving me a satellite signal. It's checking for other messages that I've gotten, and it's telling me how it's sending the message delivered via satellite. So that's all good. Now, if I want to check for new messages, I can check, or I can update the interval. And if I go into settings, my connected ZOLEO message check, I can do it manually by lifting a tray up, or I can have it on a few different signals. The less you check, the less battery it drains. So that's always good. While we're in here, I can change the tones for the different ones, and I can do some other things with the device in the settings. But let's go back here. Messaging in progress. Let's see if this is sent, and then we'll take a look at it on the computer and see what it looks like. All right, so here we go. I've gotten the message, and there it is. But one thing to note, this is just for text. You can't send images or anything like that. Let's go ahead and send a message back to the device, and let's send a text message. I'm in Google Voice. I'm just sending it from this, and I have a history because I've been testing the device here. So let's say, hello from Hellosville. All right, so that guy sent out at 3:44, and let's see when we get the message on our ZOLEO device. All right, here you can see I've just got the message. I'm connected to the satellite alone. I'm not connected to data or cellular. And if I click in and I click there, there's hello from Hellosville. So that's the basic flow back and forth. Now, I mentioned earlier that you can have longer messages if you go app to app. I also have an account set up with that number on an app, and you can see I can send this really long message here, which can come in handy. And again, the app is free. Even if you don't have a ZOLEO device, you can send nice long messages like this. One other thing to note while we're in here, your message doesn't include a location, which it will, I think, on inReach if you specify it. So if you want to send your location, it counts as another message, and you have to hit the little marker button, and then it will send your latitude and longitude as a location. And if you click on that, it will open up in an internal map, a Mapbox map, and if you click on it to an external link, so if you're not in the app, it opens up to Google Maps. For performance, it was almost exactly the same as my inReach. I did some side-by-side tests in different places like the Hoh Rainforest in Washington State, in the mountains and different trails here in Southern California. It almost always went through exactly the same as the inReach. It uses the same technology as the inReach does, the same satellite network. So in that sense, you know, I wasn't really expecting much more. I believe the inReach has 1.6 watts of peak transmitting power. This has 1.5, basically the same thing. So for messaging performance, you're not going to get anything better on an inReach from this. It's going to be about the same, and it's going to depend on your line of sight to the sky, where the satellites are, and all of the normal factors when doing satellite communications. All right, let's talk about check-ins on this thing. So check-ins are pretty simple. You basically hit this button or hit the check-in button on the app, and it will send a check-in that says, I'm okay, to a predetermined list of people that you've specified already on your account page on ZOLEO. You can't specify check-in people right now ad hoc on the app in the backcountry. You have to do that beforehand. But when you do, it will send them a message. You can also choose to share your location, and that becomes part of the message itself. So it's one message, a check-in, location, and text saying I'm okay. And that's how a check-in works. You can send those to emails, you can send them to SMS, and you can also send them to other ZOLEO users. So for weather, you can request a weather report. You basically give it your location and you get a weather report back from Dark Sky. Now, Dark Sky doesn't have the best reputation for backcountry weather. It's not as good as National Weather Service, NOAA reports, but it is okay. It does work. And also the weather report on the ZOLEO, you need the app to see it, and it's not as detailed as an inReach weather report. There's also no option for a marine or a premium extended weather report like you can get on an inReach. All right, so let's talk about SOS. SOS is pretty straightforward. You just hit this button right here to initiate it, or you can do it from the app itself. And when you do that, it contacts the International, Rescue, basically it's GEOS. GEOS is the easier acronym. And GEOS, if you do not know, was actually acquired by Garmin, I think in 2020, because they use it with their inReach products. Now, I talked to ZOLEO, and ZOLEO said that it will still work with GEOS and the rescue coordination. It's worldwide coverage, and essentially what happens is you start a two-way text conversation with the emergency response center. They dispatch search and rescue to come find you. They keep your family in the loop. All those good things happen when you initiate an SOS on here. You can cancel an SOS as well. And if you don't have a cell phone connection, you can still just hit the button. It'll send your location and it'll send a distress signal, and somebody will come to your location, hopefully based on what this is transmitting, which is important. Now, we all know that, when the you-know-what hits the fan in the backcountry and your head is bloody or you're all messed up and you need a rescue, troubleshooting a Bluetooth pairing connection on your phone cannot be something that's realistic. So having the option to hit the button on the unit itself is key, and I appreciate that that is on here, as well as the other, check-in button too. So well thought out, smart, and SOS should work exactly the same as it does with an inReach. One cool thing that I found on the help site for ZOLEO was that you can coordinate a test of the SOS function. So you basically give GEOS a time and a date when you'd like to test an SOS, and you can go through the motions and test what that's like. So if you have any curiosity or apprehension about using it, I definitely recommend scheduling a test, seeing what the experience is like, so that when you, or if you have to do it in the backcountry, you've done it before and you can feel confident in using it. One note about the ZOLEO: ZOLEO doesn't offer the supplemental rescue insurance like Garmin and GEOS do with their inReach product. And if you're not familiar with that, basically, if for some reason you're charged for a rescue, and most of the time you're not, but if you're negligent or if you're in certain jurisdictions, you might be charged for a rescue, you can get some insurance to cover that. You can't get that through ZOLEO, but you can get that through, I believe, joining the American Alpine Club. I'll put a link to it in the guide on HikingGuy.com. So if you do want that insurance and you get a ZOLEO, you can get that just through another provider. A newer function on the ZOLEO that I'm sure will be appreciated by many is the location sharing function, and that's an extra add-on to your plan. And what it lets you do is it lets you share your location with up to 5 contacts that you've specified before. And sharing your location is basically a breadcrumb trail of check-ins. Now, the nice thing is that you can change the interval on the ZOLEO using the phone settings page. You can change the interval of how often you want the location shared. So if you want to share battery, you do it less. If you want more fidelity in that track, you can do it more. So I appreciate having that there. The one kind of wrinkle is that if somebody wants to follow your progress, they need to have the ZOLEO app. And again, not a big deal. It's free. It's just a simple sign up. But once somebody has the ZOLEO app, they can follow your breadcrumbs and they'll get notifications when there's check-ins if they've opted to allow for notifications. Another thing you can do is you can download offline maps onto your device. So if I'm the one hiking with the ZOLEO or hunting or whatever it might be, I can download Mapbox maps onto my device, and I can see the breadcrumb trail on my device while I'm offline. Now, it's a thoughtful and handy feature, but I would venture to say that if you're using your smartphone primarily in the backcountry, you probably already have a mapping program like Gaia or OnX or AllTrails or whatever it might be. So I'm not sure how handy that offline map is, but you know, it's nice to have, and the maps don't take up a lot of room. So cool function if you want to use it. I'd say for most people, if you want to let people track, or your family track you while you're hiking or you're on the PCT or wherever, having that as an extra small $6 add-on is definitely worth it. All right, here's the deal with the plans. If we go to the page, I'll put a link to this too so you can check it out. There's 3 different tiers. The one concept that you need to understand is that you're only charged per message. The essential unit of all of these plans is the message. And the message is only charged for if it goes out over the satellite. And you can see here via Iridium. So if you send a message and it goes out over your phone's data connection, it doesn't count as part of this total right here. So that's definitely a good thing, right? The other thing to know is that every message that you send to every recipient is a message, right? So if I send a message to one person, a text or email, that's one message. If I get a message via satellite, that's another message. If I send my location, that's a message. If I do a check-in and I send it to 3 people, that's 3 messages. If I get a weather report, that's one message. So everything that kind of goes back and forth is a message. If you're used to inReach, it's a little bit confusing, because I think inReach is probably a confusing way to divide the plan up. But in this, it all sort of makes logical sense, right? Every time a message comes in or out via Iridium, it comes off of your plan here. Now you can get additional messages, and you can also top up your messages, which is a discounted bundle of additional messages. The one thing that I found was weird is that there's no status screen on the ZOLEO app that says you've used this many messages, or you've used, X out of Y messages. The way it works is that when you go at different intervals on your threshold on your plan, I believe it's 50 and 100 for basic, and I think 80 and 100 for InTouch, you'll get a message back on your ZOLEO that says, you've used 50% of your plan. Do you want to buy a bundle pack? And you can just respond back to that text, and you'll get a bundle of discounted messages. So, that's a decent way to solve it. Now, if you look at the basic plan, for $20, you get 25 messages. Let's say you hike once every weekend plus one other hike in the backcountry. So 5 times a month you hike. That lets you send 5 check-in messages, or 5 whatever messages a month, which I think is fine for most people, right? If you're not doing like really detailed texts back and forth with people from the backcountry, you just want to let people know you're okay, or you're running late, or you see clouds in the sky and you want to get a weather report. I think the basic plan is pretty good. And as I mentioned earlier, you can add this tracking on for $6. So I think if you got the basic for $26, I think that would be sufficient for a lot of people. Now, if you like to text a lot, I think, we up it for $15 more to 250 messages a month with the InTouch. That lets you fire off roughly 50 text messages 5 times a month in the backcountry. That's a lot, right? I don't know of a lot of people that like to text that much in the backcountry, but it's nice to have that option. And then, of course, if you're out a lot and you just want to use it without thinking about it, having the unlimited plan is obviously the way to go. You can just text. You don't have to think about how much you've used, and you can have more detailed conversations with people. So those are the tiers. I think it's very reasonable, especially if you consider that the ZOLEO costs less than an inReach. If you did that and got the basic plan, I think that's a good deal. One other note, as of when I'm doing this video, when you first sign up, there's a $20 activation fee, and there's a 3-month minimum. So at the very least, when you sign up, you'll pay 3 times 20, $60 plus 20, so $80 you were locked into. Now you can suspend your account and let's see if they have it down here. For $4 a month, you can suspend it, and what will happen is you will save your SMS number and email address. Your account's active, but you just can't, basically use it. And if you want to fire it up again, you can unsuspend it and then just go back to your plan. So that's a nice one if you're like a seasonal hiker and you just want to have this for a few months a year. I think these plans make a lot of sense, and overall I think they're very reasonable. All right, so the battery is definitely a strong point on the ZOLEO. It's advertised at 200 hours, and you can definitely get that depending on how you set it. When I was doing 12-minute message checks with no location check-ins, I was getting about 190 hours. When I was doing 12-minute message checks and 1 hour location check-ins, so sending every hour, I was getting about 140 hours of battery time. And when I did 12-minute message checks and 12-minute location check-ins, I was getting about 90 hours of battery time. So that's all very, very respectable. You can check your battery level from the app, or again, you can just tap the power button up top and it'll give you kind of like a gauge of how much battery you have left on here. All right, so hopefully you've got an idea of how this thing works and what it's all about. Now, who would I recommend this for? I'd say if you are a smartphone user in the backcountry, so the smartphone is your primary device for navigation and whatever else, taking pictures or notes, and you want a satellite communicator, the ZOLEO is a good deal. It's cheaper than an inReach Mini, the battery lasts longer, and it works without your phone in a pinch. But again, if you're primarily using your phone, it's going to be a great just way to communicate with just using another app. So in that case, I'd recommend it. I'd also recommend it for people like thru hikers who go out for a long time and maybe are coming in and out of satellite range. Having that, fall back to the data connection is going to be a handy thing to save you a couple of bucks. Now, if you send a ton of messages out, like a ton of preset messages, you probably do better with the Garmin. If you'd like to let people track you, the tracking is definitely better on the Garmin ends. And if you depend on the weather in the backcountry, the weather is definitely better on the Garmin end as well. So in those cases, I would say go with the Garmin. But again, if you're a smartphone user and you just want a satellite communicator to kind of snap into that ecosystem, the ZOLEO is going to be a great fit for you. So that's it. Hopefully this video was helpful and you kind of understand how the ZOLEO works. Now, if you want to dive deeper or you have more questions, please visit the guide on HikingGuy.com. I don't want to make the video 18 hours long, so I have a lot more detail on the guide. I have some setup tips, and if there are any developments with, like, say, the firmware or the product, I will keep the guide updated. So check that out before you move further in your search for information on the ZOLEO. And if you do look at the webpage and you still have questions, feel free to leave me a question in the comments on YouTube. I'm pretty good at answering most of them, and if I can, I will answer it. And again, if you found this video helpful, if you could please use my links, which are right under the video or on the webpage, to buy your ZOLEO. I appreciate it. There's no extra cost to you, and I depend on that income to keep the website ad-free and keep everything sponsorship and promotion free, so that you get an independent, unbiased review. All right, guys, if you get the ZOLEO, enjoy it. It's a solid unit, and I think it will serve a lot of people well. All right, see you out there.